I'm Beth Barner, the interim project director of the USDOT Mid-South Atlantic Small Business Transportation Resource Center. This is our Atlanta Bonding Education Program. Our session today is the estimated and bidding, and the facilitators will be Mr. Lee Thomas and Lou Parkins from the project called Solutions. And we are honored today also to have Ms. Kimberly King of GDOT, Georgia Department of Transportation, give us a quick overview of their processes and opportunities. So our agenda, Mr. Joe Jackson will do the welcome. I will do a roll call. Ms. Kimberly King of GDOT will speak. Estimating bidding presentation will be done by Mr. Lee Thomas and Louis Parkins. We will have questions and answers and our homework assignment that was sent to you guys early for today, and the closing and the survey. So at this moment, Mr. Joe Jackson.
Great, thank you very much, Beth, and good afternoon, good evening rather, everyone. I hope everybody's having a great Tuesday evening. Unfortunately, the Braves was not successful today. Unfortunately, they lost by 1 point. They tried to make it very exciting during the bottom of the ninth with a 3-run homer. But unfortunately, a loss is a loss. So hopefully there's tomorrow. So let's go Braves. So tonight, as Beth has mentioned, glad to have you joining us tonight. We have Ms. Kimberly King from GDOT who will present, and of course you will hear the instructor, but also we have with us tonight a guest, not a guest, but the person who's responsible with the USDOT, who is driving all of the bonding education programs throughout the country. Lisa Leon is on the call. And Lisa, would you like to bring a couple of remarks? That would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you for joining us. Surprise.
Surprise. Okay, so everyone can hear me? All right, great. So I just want to say thank you for letting me pop in. Sorry I wasn't there for day one. I do hope to be there for your graduation day, though. I want to say, what I usually say is congratulations for not only recognizing that this program was something of value to pay attention to when the information came across your email, but also for being accepted into the program and participating. You're definitely, getting ahead by doing that, because you're starting a relationship here that by experience should last you many, many years and should play nothing but a positive role in your life. That's been the experience with the Mid-South Atlantic SBTRC and all the staff that they have there providing technical services and support for small businesses around the region. I do want to say, along with that, knowing that this is usually, a BEP is usually your first entry into an SBTRC and a relationship with them, to think of it as a relationship. Keep in touch, not only when you need things, but also when you things are going well. That's when we really love to hear from small business owners, when they can say, hey, I got a contract, hey, I got bonded. If you want to share a success story of any kind, here at USDOT headquarters in Washington, D.C., where I am located, we like to applaud you, celebrate that. And we can do that in a variety of ways. When you share information with us, if you want to share your picture, your story about your business and a success, we can put it in our newsletter. We can put it on our website. Joe will tell you, and we might even invite you to Washington, D.C., where you can meet the Secretary of Transportation and tell your story right in front of hundreds of other small business owners like yourself, which is what happened just last month. So I'm glad you're here. I want you to know that, DOT and this administration supports you and is here hoping that we can get you prepared for all the opportunity that is coming ahead, especially due to the bipartisan infrastructure law. So, I mean, you are in great hands with Joe and Beth and all the experts that they have brought together for you. And I just want to say, again, welcome and thank you. See you soon, hopefully. Thanks, Joe.
Great, Lisa. Thank you very much. And we also look forward to seeing you and the rest of the team on November 15th. Great. Well, good. Well, with that said and done, I would like to introduce Ms. Kimberly A. King. Kimberly is no stranger to the Georgia Department of Transportation and to the Georgia DBE community. Basically, Kimberly is the Equal Employment Opportunity Director for GDOT. Since joining the department in 2012, Kimberly has worked hard to brand the EEO division as a professional, knowledgeable, and responsive unit to the agency. Tasked with the oversight for all aspects of the agency's civil rights functions, it has been an important part of Kimberly's mission to ensure that the EEO and the civil rights considerations maintain a seat at the table in terms of overall agency functions. Kimberly strongly believes that civil rights ought not be siloed within the EEO, but rather it should be a vital consideration in all aspects of the agency's business activities. In order to maintain that position, Kimberly and her team ensures that their customer service to both internal and external customers, as well as their understanding of the EEO function relative to programs administered by the division, are clearly and effectively communicated whenever requested. During Kimberly's tenure, she has led the unit in a number of accomplishments, including the recognition from the American Public Works Association for the creation of the Business Resource Center to assist DBEs and small businesses to get engaged with GDOT's project activity, along with yours truly, the Greater Atlanta Economic Alliance's Agency Award for Best Practices in DBE Certification and Supportive Services Assisting, and the National Association of Minority Contractors Excellence in Customer Service Award. Kimberly is an attorney by trade, and she has well over 20 years of experience in the practice areas of employment law, labor relations, collective bargaining, and appellate practice. Kimberly is a proud member of the AKA sorority and preparing to celebrate, I think, Kimberly, you said your 38th anniversary of membership. Congratulations. She's also been happily married to Herb Salone for over 29 years, Kimberly has shared with us. And she is also the proud mother of Kalia and John Salone, and she's known as Yaya to her granddaughter, Amy. So Kimberly, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we look forward to your presentation. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Joe. So certainly despite the gray that I say arrived when my son John came along, I have a grandbaby, and I told my daughter that I was too young to be grandma. So they had to think of something else. So that's where Yaya came from. And now when I'm out in public, she hollers at me really loudly wherever we are, Yaya. And people don't, because people don't automatically know what that means, they don't assume that that's my grandbaby. So sometimes I get tickled when people say, oh, that's your little girl. I'm like, no, nope. I do not have a 6-year-old at this point in my life.
That's great. That's funny.
So thank you all very much. Thank you to Joe and Beth, especially for the invitation, for providing me an opportunity to meet and talk with each of you tonight. I love to do these kinds of forums because what it provides for me is usually an opportunity to meet new firms that I am not aware of, firms that might be able and eligible to do business with GDOT, but I've not met you. We've not talked about sort of what kinds of opportunities exist at GDOT and what the benefit is of securing a certification as a disadvantaged business enterprise, or DBE, with the agency. And so this gives me an opportunity to really give you information about what we do and how we do it. So I am, as previously indicated by Joe, the EEO director for the Georgia Department of Transportation, responsible for all things civil rights, for your purposes, that really is about administering the DBE program. I am assisted in that opportunity by Menelik Aline, who is our assistant administrator for external programs, meaning the DBE program, and Victor Opara Amici, who is our DBE program manager. So they are chiefly responsible for that day-to-day operation in terms of certifying the firms. Once certified, the firms then are supported and assisted in that certification by a supportive services team. They are monitored, they are reported. We are reporting to our Federal Operating Administration, FHWA, FTA, FAA. So we have a team that does that for us. But certification happens for firms because we are the recipient of federal funds from those agencies that I talked about. And because we receive those funds, we must have a program that says to those federal operating administrations, this is how we are going to assist those DBE firms with the expenditure of the monies that you're providing to us. So because we have a federally funded program, we must have a DBE certification that supports that program. And so that DBE certification really is your gold star as a business owner. It is your point of entry, sometimes to doing business with the agency, where we have goals attached to those federally funded projects. Our prime contractors are looking for DBEs with whom to work on those federally funded projects. So they're looking for DBEs that can act as subcontractors on certain areas of work for them where they have been awarded a federally funded contract by the agency. So they're operating as the prime. They're looking for DBEs to work with them as a subcontractor. And we are then looking for firms to get certified so that they are eligible, so that they are ready, willing, and able to work with those prime contractors as a subcontractor. So that DBE certification really does provide you that point of entry, again, for those federally funded projects. In order to do business with the agency, however, you do not have to be DBE certified. I don't want to leave anyone with the impression that that certification is a necessary prerequisite to doing business with the agency. It is not. But what is a necessary prerequisite to doing business with the agency is to be pre-qualified in the professional services space, to be registered as a contractor or a subcontractor in the construction space. Those two things you must have, depending on the type of business, the type of service that you are offering, in order to do business with the agency. And that once you have secured either your construction registration or your professional services pre-qualification, that tells us as an agency that you have the requisite capacity to do the kind of work anticipated by a GDOT project. You have the requisite experience, personnel, equipment, resume, licensure, all of those elements that go into capacity or ability to do the work. That's what's being measured and quantified by that, again, pre-qualification for professional services or registration for construction. And so for the firms to count toward this participation credit that we're talking about, that's where the certification comes from. So we want you to be certified, again, because it provides that sort of extra something that makes your firm more attractive to those prime contractors that do business with GDOT. We've got two firms very similarly situated, do the same kind of work in the same geographic area, have been doing it for the same amount of time with the same sort of personnel, same sort of equipment. Qualities are of a very similar level, but one of those firms is DBE certified and one of those firms is not. If that prime is looking for a subcontractor to work on a GDOT federally funded project that has a goal attached to it, they're probably going to select that DBE firm because they can use that firm toward securing DBE credit on the project. So that is the distinction that makes a difference between your firm as a certified DBE and a firm that is not certified. Why? Why is that certification important? Well, again, it is a point of entry to this federal fund that we have access to as the agency. So our federal spend last year was $32,391,750 to disadvantaged business enterprises. But we do not begin and end our support and assistance for DBE firms at that federal dollar. We look for other places within the agency, other areas of opportunity that exist at the Georgia Department of Transportation for DBE participation. And each of those other areas of opportunity have their own spend attached. And sometimes those are state dollars that we are looking for DBEs, small businesses, minority and women-owned firms, veteran-owned businesses to be engaged with us on those project opportunities, ITBs, or projects that we refer to as routine maintenance, where we give an invitation to bid. That's what ITB stands for. $9.5 million worth of work was awarded to disadvantaged business enterprises in that space last year. State-funded capital construction, $43.1 million awarded to DBEs and small businesses out of those state funds. TIA is the Transportation Investment Act funding. So those are monies that are geographically located around the state based on a particular tax that the residents of those regions have agreed to, so that they can use those monies to be engaged in certain kinds of roadway improvement projects in that part of the state. So that's another $3.9 million. Total $88 million, $88.9 million awarded to DBE firms from the Georgia Department of Transportation in those various work areas. Why are we talking about this? Because each of these areas think about where can we enlist DBEs to assist us in this work activity. And it's not always the federal dollar that we're talking about. Sometimes it is different kinds of money. It is state-funded monies that the legislature has provided to us to do certain kind of work here at GDOT. So we're always thinking about where those opportunities exist within the agency for us to support disadvantaged business enterprises in getting engaged with the agency. So again, meetings like this are where I get to meet those firms, talk about where those dollars are, what kind of work activity we're looking for, how we may be able to assist you in your business development in terms of getting attached to a GDOT project or some other state-funded project that might not be the Georgia Department of Transportation, maybe another entity of the state, but we support our disadvantaged business enterprises in finding those opportunities, whether they be at GDOT or elsewhere in the state. So again, that DBE certification is this wonderful point of entry for you in terms of doing business either with the agency or elsewhere in the state. So when I talked about construction and professional services, we're talking about what kind of work activity. Pre-construction or professional services are going to happen before you see the asphalt and the striping and the curbing and the slab jacking, the things that happen on the roadway that you can drive past and see. Before you see those things, that pre-construction activity must happen, that engineering and design activity, right-of-way acquisition, right? We have to purchase property sometimes that's adjacent to the roadway where we're working, and right-of-way acquisition is an area that a DBE can assist us with if that DBE is in the real estate space. Environmental, public engagement, erosion control, resurfacing, bridges, intelligent transportation systems. All of those areas of work are available to DBEs if they have an interest, an aptitude, and have secured the requisite pre-qualification or registration to do business with the agency. Is there a question, Ms. Beth?
Yes, Miss Keela Fitzgerald has a question.
Hi, Kimberly and everyone on the call. So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
My firm, we submitted a proposal for a project that had a set aside of 30%. Okay. And I worked with this prime for like 6 weeks on it, just going over every step, going over the takeoff, just everything. Now, my question is, they were awarded the project, and how does GDOT, or are there any kind of checks and balances? Because I think my numbers were submitted, and and part of that 30% was my firm in the scope that we do. But what checks and balances are there to make sure that that minority that was submitted with the bid is actually going to be doing the work?
So we don't have set asides, though we do have projects that have goals attached to them.
Okay.
And those goals are very specifically delineated on a project based on the dollar amount of the subcontract work, the number of DBEs that operate in that workspace, the geographic location in the state of the work activity, et cetera, right? So once that goal is attached, in order to be considered for that project award, that prime contractor must provide to us a satisfactory DBE participation plan. So part of our responsibility here in EEO, I said that we're responsible for all things civil rights, is not only to sort of have conversations like this where we can meet firms who are eligible for certification and then certify those firms. Once certified, then help those firms get attached to those projects. But once those firms are attached to those projects, we have a responsibility to monitor that participation, right? Because we have to report that participation to the Federal Operating Administration that gave us the money to do the work. So if we have a project, simple math, because that's not my strength. So if we have $1 million project with a 10% DBE goal, that means $100,000 must be spent with a disadvantaged business enterprise. That prime contractor can do a single contract for $100,000, 10 $10,000 contracts, 2 $50,000 contracts, however they decide to appropriate those funds, they can, but we want to see that that money is being spent with a DBE. So they have to submit what are called monthly DBE participation reports. Those reports must say with whom they are working, what kind of work that firm is doing, and how much that firm is being paid for the work and how much they've been paid to date. So as of the date that submission is made, they must be able to tell us how much they've been paid. Perhaps that firm hasn't been paid at all because this is a long-term engagement, right? Maybe this is a 5-year overall contract and the firm is on task order number 7, which won't be issued until year 3. Then you're not going to show up on that participation report. But we are aware, based on the plan that was submitted, who those DBEs are, so we know who to ask about, when to look for them, how much they're supposed to be paid, and what kind of work activity they're doing. So that monitoring is that check and balance that you're talking about, Ms. Fitzgerald.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. So again, this was just a very sort of quick list of the kinds of work activities that could be made available on a typical GDOT project, because I wanted folk to understand that we're not always talking about just the asphalt, just the striping, just the construction work that you see that you can drive past on 285, 400, right? Sometimes there are other work activities that happen before that construction get started that is eligible for DBE participation. So I wanted to provide this list just to keep in your head that there are a variety of work activities that can exist on a federally funded project or on a state-funded GDOT project that may not be those that you see necessarily when you're out riding. So how do we support transportation investment? So we have what are called major mobility investment projects, MMIP, which is those are those very large multi-million, what we refer to sometimes as mega projects. So these MMIP activities are those that we are using to support each of these areas: mobility in Metro Atlanta, mobility in emerging metros and rural Georgia, statewide freight and logistics. Obviously, lots of business is coming into and through Georgia. It needs to be able to operate on those highways, in our port system. All of those mobility modules, this agency has responsibility for. We are constantly trying to think of ways that we can support and increase the opportunity for sort of moving into and through Georgia. So these are the considerations for the agency when we're thinking about those projects. And again, improving mobility for people, improving mobility in the more rural parts of the state, all of those activities require us to get assistance, right? There are any number of opportunities that exist in support of each of these work elements. And so I wanted to make sure that I included this just to give you some view of sort of the breadth and the depth of the considerations that happen at GDOT when we're talking about the kind of work activity we do. We're moving people, we're moving freight, we're moving traffic, And all of those areas of work require us to have help from the industries that some of you may be involved in. So, we do our best here at GDOT to make sure that you have access once you are a DBE certified firm to those work activities, but we understand that sometimes, you need some assistance in getting to that very robust and deliberate type of engagement that we're talking about. How can we help you with that? Well, we have a supportive services provider that is there to assist and support our DBEs and small businesses in any way we can in terms of making sure that you have access to that project activity. And sometimes that's about, I'd really like to submit proposal on this GDOT project, but I've never submitted proposal to the agency before. I've done it at the municipal level, but I've never done it for GDOT. Can you help me understand what a successful proposal for a GDOT project looks like? Yes, our supportive services providers can assist you with that. They can pull an old proposal of the same sort that you're looking at and kind of go through it with you, tell you what the elements of that proposal are, tell you what kind of costing you should be thinking about, what kind of estimating in terms of work quantities you should be thinking about. If it is your back office that you're concerned about, accounting and bookkeeping, is an issue for us because we have to abide by certain federal regulations, federal acquisition regulations, in terms of our ability to do business with firms. So your accounting system must meet certain criteria in order for you to do business with the agency. Our supportive services folk can help you understand those accounting criteria that you have to meet in order to do certain kinds of business with us. Scheduling, procurement, using our website to find those opportunities. Whatever, almost anything that you can think of in terms of assistance to get attached to a GDOT project, we can provide through our supportive services provider. And the really great thing about them is that they're free of charge. Those services are absolutely free to you as a disadvantaged business enterprise because we're paying the bill for that supportive services consultant. Federally funded projects, we have a provider, Construction Estimating Institute, CEI, is our supportive services provider for those federally funded projects that I talked about, but we have the same thing on the state side. So MH Miles itself, a disadvantaged business enterprise, is our supportive services consultant on the state side. And we must distinguish the two consultant teams because of where the funding source comes from. So if you are interested in a project that's being paid for with state dollars, we would get you with the folk at MH Miles to talk about where those state dollars are coming from, what kinds of projects you might have an interest in, what the prerequisites to those projects might be. Miles can help you sort through that. On the federally funded side, CEI can help you sort through that. You tell them what your needs are in terms of, I have a question about, I need information on, just what we're talking about tonight, bonding, insurance, access to lines of credit, whatever it is that you think you are in need of to get better attached to these projects, we have a supportive services consultancy that can assist you with that. And I think it's important for you to hear me say, we are always thinking about how we can help you with your engagement. And we understand very clearly that sometimes it's about sort of getting behind the curtain, right? And seeing how things work, where they work, what that work activity looks like, and what I need to do to get a piece of that work activity. That's what the supportive services team is there for. These are folk who sometimes have worked for the agency, sometimes have worked in the fields that you're looking for. They are the auditors and accountants. They are the estimators and the general contractors. Those teams have the kinds of resources that you would need in order to get the kind of assistance necessary to get engaged in these contract activities. So please make contact with those folk if you need us. You always have the opportunity to call me. I think Ms. Beth has all of my information. It was on the slide if she's going to share it with folks. I think maybe one of the very first ones. So, find me, call me, email me, send me a smoke signal. Let me know what the need is. We can certainly talk about it. I'm always interested in hearing about the work activity that your firm is engaged in. and where that work activity might fit in the GDOT space, and if not in the GDOT space, where else there might be utilization available for you. So that is the extent of my presentation. I know you have a lot to get to tonight, so I certainly don't want to belabor the point or keep you any longer than necessary, but I certainly am here if folk have questions. If you don't have the time or inclination now and you think of something later, please feel free to get in touch with me and let me know. Thank you, Ms. Beth.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Kimberly King. Okay. So no questions right now. We'll proceed with our presentation for estimating and bidding. We will have Mr. Lee Thomas come and speak. Mr. Lee Thomas, you're up.
I will tee you Lee up. So thank you very much, Kim, for that information. We look forward to our continuous partnership. And as Kimberly mentioned, GDOT basically focused their DBE efforts not only just on the DBE, but other opportunities, not only where it requires federal dollars, but other dollars. So Kimberly, thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. So tonight, as Beth mentioned, we are honored to have us with us an instructor and two instructors who are no strangers to the Greater Atlanta Economic Alliance or the Bonding Education Program. This firm I've known for close to about 20 plus years and working on major mega projects such as the Hartsfield-Jackson's previous $6.5 billion project. Project Cost Solutions is one of, if not the only African-American minority-owned cost engineering firms in the country. Their experience and knowledge in government contracting industries includes managing, reviewing, and implementing strategic business processes for government sectors and private and public sectors. So tonight we have with us Mr. Lee Thomas, and Lee will introduce the president, Mr. Lewis Parkins, who will be presenting tonight. So Lee, once again, thank you very much for all you and Project Cost Solutions provide. Thank you very much and take it away. It's all yours.
All right. Well, thanks very much for that, Joe. And good evening, everybody. And thank you guys for your time this evening. I know after 6 o'clock, pretty much people are checked out, but we've done this program now for a number of years with Joe and his organization. And, we like doing it because it's our way of kind of giving back what we have learned, and people like Louis Parkins that have done this for 48 years has learned over, a course of time. And so we give back and try to give our best practices of how we approach, cost estimating and bidding, because they're broken out into two parts. It's estimating first, and then your bid. And so when we're talking to, DBEs, and usually we get a cross section of participants in these classes. And so we try to make it as interactive as possible. This is about you guys and, us, giving what we can give back to you. So we try to make it, we have a curriculum, but we want to make sure that as we're going through, any questions that you guys may have, that you go ahead and ask us, because it's about you and making sure that, when I do these type of things or I go to these type of programs, I try to get one takeaway that could improve my business, tenfold or leap us forward a little bit. And so tonight we're just going to go through, pretty much, best practices and making sure that we're all on the same page with, what estimating and bidding, kind of looks like. Is somebody trying to say something?
Everyone, could you mute your phones, please? Mute your video.
Home in a meeting.
Could you mute your,
No, he went to go pick up some dinner for us. I'm in a
please, excuse me, could you please mute Miss?
Okay.
Okay,
sorry, guys. I'll do that now.
yes, Miss Williams.
Okay, thanks very much. So like I said, Joe teed it up, correctly. We do large capital projects, for Atlanta Hartsfield Airport. If you've been to the airport, we pretty much, estimated probably about 80% of those capital projects that are taking place. A lot of DBE participation out of the airport. One of our customers is MARTA. MARTA is renovating all 38 stations here in Atlanta, and we're working with a lot of the design firms as well as the program management firms in some capacities to either develop some cost estimates on the preliminary side of those projects, or we are reviewing those projects because, like Kimberly said, they are federally funded. And sometimes we're reviewing those projects that are being, or those cost estimates that are being submitted by the design firms that says, okay, well, hey, we're gonna, improve, HE Home Station, and we're on the pre-construction side. So by the time these things hit the street, our work has pretty much been done on behalf of the owner. The goal is that we do pre-construction estimates that informs the owner before he goes to bid how much he should be expecting in terms of those bids coming in. And so when you're talking about at the airport, or you're talking about a large construction project, it's easily 40, 50 million bucks. We just did one for Henry County Water Authority. They're going to do a new wastewater treatment facilities and, different facilities on that property. It's a $158 million estimate. And that's a 400 and some odd page document that really details the cost. And when you think about what you guys do in terms of, construction, a lot of times the owners only get a number that says, hey, I can do your job for, $10 million and whatever, but he has no detail behind that number. Our job is to make sure that the owner has a lot of detail behind that number, so he's in a better position to negotiate with the general contractor. And it's broken out by CSI division. So if you're doing a lot of construction work, you're going to hear CSI, and that's how these things are broken out, especially on the public side. And that's how a lot of the DBE goals sometimes can be tied to certain divisions of contracts. So with that, one of the things we did, and one of the things that Beth sent out, to you guys, was a homework assignment. And I'm hoping that everybody has gotten a chance to kind of look at that homework assignment, and we'll kind of go through what we start this thing out with is kind of going through, which happens when the bid is due. So 6:00 p.m., we ask for everybody to have a bid, a response to the RFP. And so those that have prepared a response, Beth, that we could just go through, and I'm going to take down where everybody's number is at.
Everyone did not submit their homework assignment. Some few did, and they're not all right here in front of me. I think Miss Fitzgerald, didn't you turn yours in? I know Bryson did. Miss Nowlin.
If we could do this, if you did the homework assignment, and one of the things that we do is we start this process of estimating and bidding with a homework assignment we call Bake a Cake, and it's a RFP response to say, hey, here's the scope of work. We need your price. Submit us a price of how much it is that you're going to charge us to bake a cake, right? Or for this party. And so what happens is we get the bids from each one of the parties that actually have done it. So if you have a number that you went through this exercise, if you could just give us your number, that'll be great. And that's kind of how we'll start this thing out. So if you got a number,
raise your hand.
What is that?
Sabrina, did you do yours?
I did not get a chance to.
I got a homework assignment from 2 people.
and what is the two numbers that you have on that sheet of paper?
Bryson said they chose not to submit a bid.
Okay.
Is Kimberly, you there? And who's the second person?
I did, Levette did.
Miss Levette Couch of Well Clean Solution. What was your number?
$350.
She said $350.
And you are the successful bidder. If the rest chose not to bid and only one bid came up, then you're the successful bidder. And that is exactly how the industry is these days. Very few bids. I had to take that opportunity to slip in there. So,
but this is what happens in the industry, like Louis said. And so, we just did a project, and that's what actually happened, and sometimes bidders will bid and they'll bid so outrageously, to the RFP response just because they want to put a number in. So when something comes up next time, they can actually say, "Hey, we actually responded." Bryson, you got I see your hand up there.
Yes, Miss Kimberly. Now,
Beth, this is Tiffany.
Tiffany.
I just wanted to comment on why we submitted the bid the way we responded. And we responded to not submit a number based on the information that was provided in the RFP. There was not enough information for us to provide a number. So we decided to politely decline to participate and to be considered for the next time. So we just didn't not submit a bid. We reviewed the RFP and the requirements were not clear. There was no dates. There was no time to ask a question. There was nothing. So we weren't comfortable submitting a number with so little information. So I just want to put that out there.
Perfect response.
I have a question here. I sent in a bid, but I had a call for action because I needed more, but I did not want to be precluded. So I did submit a bid with a call of action.
Miss TJ Jules said her number, she submitted $200. Miss Jules, you can speak. Let me find you, the mutual. Unmute you. Oh, up there, okay. Yes, Miss Jewel. She's not speaking.
Well, it's funny. It's funny. I see Virginia Murphy responded. She said, "Hey, I just received this today, and I didn't realize it was due today." But that's what happens to DBEs a lot of times. Is that somebody, a general contractor needs a number by X day, and guess what? You have a very short time window to read through the scope, to put a number together, and hope that you got everything that you have to be successful in the response. And that's what happens a lot of times in the world of contracting for DBEs that are trying to get on these projects and hoping that your number is good. And if it gets accepted, you got to be very careful to make sure that, hey, you, like you said, you read through the scope enough and really know how to sometimes walk away from opportunities. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of them come up, but sometimes you need to walk away because you just don't have enough time and enough information to put together. And a lot of times when you're trying to get information from a contractor, he's just looking for numbers at that point in time. But this is a good way that we start this exercise, because what we want to say is everybody that submitted a number, everybody is right? Whatever number you submitted, it is your number, right? We don't know what's behind your number. The only thing that the general contractor is doing is he's looking at a set of numbers, and then he's going to try to pick the best one, probably the low bidder in that category. But everybody is right in terms of estimating and bidding on their project, right?
I have a question for you, Lee.
Sure.
I have a question. You said that you all go out before the bid is actually let to other subs because you want to get the customer or the owner of a price of what it should cost them. And several bids that I've been dealing with in the last couple of weeks, the owner has made us rebid on several different projects, not just the same owner, because everybody's numbers were way beyond what the original estimate was that they had gotten. What do you do in that instance? Because they want you to change your numbers and make them lower, and you can't.
Well, Louis, I'll
Can I
let you
respond?
Go ahead, Louis.
That is the nature of the business right now, where projects that are being bid as we speak were budgeted and designed a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. In fact, a lot of them even beyond that, because they were put on the shelf during COVID. And then COVID happened. And then Russia and Ukraine happened. And a lot of other things happened. And as you all know, you're in the business, we all live here. We all live in the world. It's not just America, the whole world. Escalation in the cost of everything, and especially construction, has been the worst I've ever seen it. And I've been in this thing nearly 50 years. Is absolutely outrageous. And we are here trying to give owners an understanding and an opinion of what we think it should be. And the marketplace keeps telling us, no, it's 30% more. There's also another reason behind all of that. And that is, there is really a shortage of not just materials, but technical and skillful resources in our industry. That's probably the biggest part of that increase in cost, because contractors such as yourself just cannot afford to take the risk of finding people that you don't have at that point. So you put in big numbers hoping that you can convince somebody to come and work for you. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, you cannot go and put numbers in that you cannot live with. It's your risk. You should not take risks that might put you out of business.
Yeah, that happens. So, sure, you got the floor.
Can I just jump on the Bryson bandwagon? I didn't get it until, well, I didn't say today. I got it yesterday, but that's really too quick because I'm working on some real estimates. So it was too quick for me to turn it around. And if I would say like Bryson, I wasn't sure of the date to turn it in. So you would know how to turn it in. And that is very unfortunate that does happen to us as DBEs. We get requested to spend time giving people prices that they just really want us to waste our time giving them prices on, and they have no intent on using us going forward. We've actually had to tell some GCs, no, we're not going to bid your project. We're because I'm tired of bidding your projects and you won't even give me feedback. In order for me to bid your project, you're going to at least have to tell me where I came in line on that bid. And if you're not willing to commit to that, and I make some of them commit to a meeting after I know the bid date, I make them get on my calendar to say, you're going to tell me where we landed, you know, and give me feedback on where you think we missed the ball. That's critical for me as a small business. And I am kind of done with there are some out there that I won't do a bid for. And because we are small, we're DBE, I asked the question, do you have this project already? Or are you bidding against other people? Because if you're bidding against other people, I don't make you a priority. I only make you a priority if you already have the job. And I'm not being mean.
Amen.
I'm protecting my resources because
Right.
I don't have 12 estimators on my team.
Good. Well, remember, class, that's what we shared last week. So, these guys have almost 45 years. So we got a lot of information to cover tonight. So tonight's a class. If we've never proctored the questions before, Beth, we have to definitely make sure we proctor the questions. So we have a wealth of information for that these two guys and PCS is going to share, and it will not be to anyone's benefit to not get this information. So I would caution you guys to really listen to the classes tonight, write down your questions, and towards the end, let's have them prepared to answer some of the ones we can. And remember, a part of our class, basically, this is only a part and a fraction of our class. The class begins after November 15th. So after November 15th, as we administer your intake forms, you're going to have the privilege to meet and follow up with PCS as well, based on your intake and based on your assessments. So once again, let's get it in. We got a lot of information to cover.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and let Mr. Lou Parkins share his screen, okay?
So Louis, this class is warmed up, so we could jump right in and skip over kind of the normal introduction. And this is great. This is exactly what we like to get into, where you guys have this real world experience, and so we could just jump in and really start talking about, like I said, we're going to share with you best practices and what we consider, what we do as estimating, and like I said, and how we approach it, and the types of estimate and all that other good stuff that we go through. And then as we go through it, you guys, just like I said, feel free to ask questions or write your questions down. We got a lot of information, so we're going to take a break in a little while here, because I know this goes from 6 to 8. And so we just want to kind of get in. So Louis, I'll let you, take over, and we'll just kind of dive straight in.
Okay, Lee, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, good.
You
All right,
wanna
good
put it
evening,
on the-
everybody.
You want to put it on the
Good evening,
presentation
everyone.
format at the
Excuse
bottom?
me?
You want to put it on the presentation format down at the little screen?
No, if everybody can see this, I'd rather not, because I need to be able to see what I'm coming to.
Okay,
Is that all right?
All right.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we
Yes.
can-
Yes, I
Yeah,
see it.
okay, nobody, okay, good. All right, so as I said, good evening. Usually I get all 2 hours, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna get through all of this. No, I will get through all of this, but in some cases, I'll probably go through the highlights. Now, let me tell you, my intention tonight is not to teach you how to estimate. It's simply to give you some of the processes and procedures to develop an estimate. I've been in this nearly 50 years and I'm still learning how to estimate because estimating is a very dynamic process, both for our basic lives every day. We're all estimators because every day we get up and estimate. I think we all probably have a budget that we have to put together for each month or each year or for some task that we're doing. So we all estimate, and the principles are the same no matter what. It's just that in construction, it's extremely technical and much larger, but the principles are the same. And if you stick to those principles, mainly of being organized and current and document everything, then your results will be good. We're not going to tell you that by looking at what I'm showing you this evening, you're going to win bids. We're just hoping that you'll be better organized to get winning bids or to prepare winning bids and understand, as that lady said before, where you where you might not be winning bids, see how things went wrong based on how you organized your things. Okay, and yes, to the lady who mentioned about going back to contractors and saying, why didn't I get the bid? Yes, you got to have a lessons learned, and I would not put a bid together if I were you if you did not get that from your contractor, that you will have follow-up and lessons learned on it. And as a small business on the professional side of things or the pre-construction side of things, we have exactly the same problems, and Lee can attest to that. Okay, so introduction and general discussion. I'm going to be going through these slides. I'm basically going to just go over what's on the slide because there's a lot of slides, and a lot of this you already understand and know, but basically, hopefully, I'm going to leave you with something that you can use as some kind of organizing document as you go forward. So what's an estimate? These are the things I'll be discussing first. What's an estimate? What is estimating? Is it necessary? And why is it necessary? When it's necessary? What is scope, which is the most important part of an estimate, as a few of you alluded to by not presenting a bid for the cake, because you didn't have the scope, you couldn't understand the scope, or the scope provided to you was not adequate. And then types of estimates. What is estimating? Let's just do some of the technical terms here. Estimating is a prediction of the quantity and cost of resources needed to accomplish an activity. The main estimating organization in America, the AACE, that's what they've used as the definition of estimating. Estimating is the process of taking the whole and breaking it down into parts and assigning a cost to the parts. I.e., you go into the supermarket, you can get vegetables, meat, cereals, milk, that kind of thing. You put them in groups and you identify the groups and put cost to the elements in the groups. The sum of the parts then is totaled to determine the cost of the whole. And hopefully when you do that before you left to the supermarket, the estimate you put together would be the same as what you had when you got to the teller. In most cases it's not, but at least you started with something. Basic steps: break down project into sub-assemblies, processes, or activities, i.e. the scoping and the takeoff. Assign a cost to the sub-assemblies, processes, and activities, i.e. the price. Sum the costs in sub-assemblies, processing activities to arrive at the cost of the whole project. Review, analyze the results. What's an estimate? It's a document. It's a documented determination or evaluation of the resources necessary to complete a predetermined task. And in the construction industry, the industry we're talking about, it involves mainly these titles, these subjects: labor, material, time, equipment, and the cost of money. Don't ever forget to include the cost of your money that you're having to use to fund your project. Then we have the Webster's definition, which you can look at. When's the estimate necessary? One, to establish a budget, and that's where PCS's services primarily operate, in the budget side, i.e. the pre-construction side. It is to determine the main elements, which are the labor, equipment, and materials. And it helps to determine time, because if you have an estimate of what you're doing in dollars and activities, you can then put time next to it. And you use it to win bids and secure work. You also use it to determine the cost of changes on your ongoing work. So change order estimating is a critical part of what the industry does and what contractors do, because there's no project that doesn't have change orders. Simply put, that's the business we're in. Things change, situations change, owners change their minds, something gets done wrong. So be prepared to deal with your change order estimates, and they're not the same as your bid estimates. There are things you have to do differently when you do change order work. Systematically determine the value of a defined scope and the resources that are required to produce that scope. Why is an estimate necessary? To determine costs, track and determine profitability. Track your time and schedules, your material purchases. That's a very important one. You have to know how much material to purchase. If you're into concrete, you need to know how much this pour is gonna need. You don't want to order something that you don't need, or under order it and don't have enough, and you get caught with a time problem. And also to validate claims. I just went on that one, yes. Okay, what is scope? As I said earlier, this is the most important part of estimating. If you don't have the scope, you'll never get the price. It doesn't matter how good your pricing is. The defined limit of work that is to be considered. Okay, that is the scope, and you must make sure your scope, you fully understand the scope and intention of that design that you're putting a price to. It should include a determination of time, how long it will take, the logistics, how and when the site is accessible, things like that. The constructability, can the project be built per the contract documents, and what are the risks? Just as the cake did not seem to be able to be produced per the documents that were provided, and somebody said, no, I'm not doing it, because the scope is not clearly defined. Types of estimates. In your case, you're probably doing most of the last one, hard bid estimates, but there's a whole range of different estimates for different purposes in the industry and for different times during the industry or during the life of a project. Range estimating, i.e., give me a price. How much should pouring this slab cost? $10,000 to $15,000. At least we know it's not 100,000, and we know it's not a 1,000. So it gives somebody an idea. Order of magnitude. I think it's about 12,500. We do a lot of order of magnitude estimates because part of our job is to help the owners develop that budget. Unit cost estimates, which is what I think mainly the customer that most of you work for, the various dots, do a lot of unit cost estimates, and you simply take existing or historic unit costs and put against some basic elemental quantities. Parametric estimates, which are using one element of a project to drive the cost of other elements. Elemental or systems estimate, which is basically something to do with breaking out a project or a building by systems, i.e. how much should the roof cost, although it might have 4 different CSI trades in it. How much should the exterior wall cost? How much is the electrical cost? Those systems. A trade estimate, which is primarily the CSI breakout. And then of course your hard bid estimate, which takes probably mainly the element above it, the trade estimates that you're doing, and converts that into a bid estimate with all of the indirect costs that you have to add to it. So types of estimate, typical estimate ranges. We're doing a concept estimate. We expect it to be in the plus or minus 10% range of development. Schematic is when it's a 35% design development. And these are the types of estimating we would do for each of these submission types that the industry uses. or submission stages, and then of construction, which is where primarily contractors get involved. However, the industry has changed over the last 30, 40 years from being a hard bid estimate, a hard bid industry to a negotiation industry. And a lot of times now contractors are in the scope of things at this point, at the schematic. In the design build world, the contractor comes in earlier, teams up with the owner and the designers and start putting numbers together. In our business, we tend to be also involved with that because the owner needs somebody on the other side of the table to give a check to that contractor. Oops. Okay, so let's take a look at each of those types of estimates. Range estimates gives a low and a high value, i.e. a range, a good first step to improving accuracy of the budget that you're putting together. Gives more information about the nature of the work, i.e. you're starting to develop some written information about the project. Differences give an indication of the uncertainty of the task. And percentages, the percentage delta indicates the level of risk perceived for the task. I mean, only if you're working with architects and owners early on would you get into many of these, i.e. 1 through 4 or 5. But from our side of the table, we get into them all the time. And then just going through the rest of these, I give a detailed understanding of what each of the descriptions here are. Order of magnitude gives you based on a scope, based on assumed quantities, and based on unit price applied to the assumed quantities. And I have some examples of those I could share with you. Unit cost estimate. This type is used in very preliminary stages of the project where the only known information is the number of units that are being planned. An example of that is probably, want to put up some street lights. How many street lights are you going to put up? At least that's a scope element that's known. Now, there might be a lot of other things to do with that scope, but at least we can start with that. It's usually based on historic data. You've not gone to the marketplace to try and get prices yet. You simply go back to the last set that you did, or you call somebody that's done some recently and find out what kind of pricing to use. Must be adjusted for specific conditions, the location, codes and ordinances associated with putting that construction in place, the site conditions, the geometry of the land or real estate, the architecture being used, and escalation between the prices you got and where you're going to get to in terms of finishing the project. Escalations of, as we all know these days, is an extremely important number to have in your numbers. If you hide it in your unit prices, that's fine. But as an estimator to contractors, please make sure that somewhere along the way you have some price in your documentation for escalation. And in most cases, I would advise that you identify to the contractor that you're giving your prices to, or to the owner that you're giving your prices to. It can be one of those contingencies that you only use if necessary, or you say, I've had to build this in there because I don't know what the price of concrete is going to be 6 months down the road, which is when I'm going to be having to buy it based on the schedule. Parametric, based on historic information with a predetermined value, as I said before. Continuing, elemental or building system estimates are used primarily as a design tool, i.e. Engineers, architects will break their project down into functional elements, not material elements. Material elements are the CSI codes, i.e. 03 is concrete, 04 is masonry, and so on. But an exterior wall might have that and 3 or 4 other CSI traits in it. So you can't really estimate when you're designing based on the materials. You have to estimate based on the function that is taking place. It assists designers in keeping track of the cost of various building elements. The design is the design or building is broken down into elements or functional pieces, and the estimate is prepared accordingly. That's my favorite way of doing estimates, because I think we should estimate based on how the building's being put together, or the road or the pavement or whatever it is we're doing. Or like Lee mentioned, that's sewer plant that we estimated a couple months ago for Henry County. We had to put together the estimate based on the functional parts of that sewer plant. The estimate is prepared using industry standard CSI codes or numbers. That's the trade estimate. Then, of course, there's the hard bid. Of course, this is to win work, and we're in business to win work. But this is also where you take risk. And that's why my estimates go up against contractors, and contractors said, when's the last time you built one of these? Well, I've never built one. That's not my job. My job is to estimate them, but it is his job or his or her job to build them. And he or she is the ones taking the risk. May involve many parties such as subcontractors, suppliers to prepare their bid, i.e. you have to reach out to other suppliers, mainly in the subcontracting area, which is I think mostly where most of the participants in this class are. You have to go out and make relationships and get information from suppliers. Usually lump sum or lump sum based on unit prices, which I think is where the GDOT would be if you're doing work for GDOT. They're competitive usually, but as I said earlier on, especially on the bigger projects, the primary contractor or primary CM entities on the larger jobs are getting fewer and fewer. And that's what's driving up the prices, no competition. And it may be binding, usually is binding. You send somebody your number, they expect you to provide that service or that product for that number. And so those who did not provide a number for the cake, they knew that it would have been binding. And if they ended up going out and having to spend money to buy the materials and put the time in to bake the cake, and it was more, then it's out coming out of their pocket, and you lose business. You can lose your business because of putting in numbers that were not that are binding and can't do the work. So your estimating is very important. Okay, the process, and I'm not sure when you want to take the break. This might be a good time to take a 5-minute break and then come back and let me continue this first part and then finish up and then get to the bidding side. Is that?
Yeah, Louis, let's do this because I want to. So we'll take a break here, pause, but I want to just kind of tie out what you just went over in terms of scope and then the different types of estimates that are there. Because, like I said, this is our primary business. We do this every day, right? And so if you go back up a little bit, Louis, to that slide where you got the 30%, the 60%, and the 100%. So we get drawings, just like you guys get drawings, and we got to know where those drawings are at in the phase. If they're schematic documents, if they're design documents, and where the owner is actually, this thing is coming out at. And so when you're talking about scope, right? For us, we got to put a lot of allowances and contingencies in there because we don't know yet. We know things are coming. So when you know construction, if you're at the 35% design phase, you only have so much information, right? So how can I tell you this is going to be $10 million when I don't know yet? Because the design is not finished. We don't have enough detail. And so when you're thinking about this, if for us, if we get a set of documents, we can't challenge architects in terms of, they say, hey, these are 100% construction documents. For us, when we look at those documents, we may got 70% information, maybe 80% information in there, right? But they're saying 100% construction documents. So when you're doing this, you have to really know the scope and think about everything that is going to take in order to complete the work before you put your number in, right? And just like the bake a cake example where people did not reply, because you can look at a set of documents, there's just not enough information in there that you can ask your question to put a number against. And so I know for us, if we have to do that and go through those challenges, I can only imagine what happens when it gets to, especially contractors like you guys, where you got to put numbers together. And like Louis said, some of those numbers are binding, right? So I just think this right here is a very important thing that, I want to point out, that when you're doing and really understanding the scope and really understanding when you're putting your numbers together. Because like I said, Louis been doing this for 40 years, and we got others that have been doing it for 50 years. But it's a very hard and challenging um, task to do, especially when you're on short time frame or you're looking at a set of documents. You got good time, but you really got to understand the information that's being presented to you. So I just wanted to come back and kind of touch that because I just really think scope and putting, numbers together and really just closing your eyes and think about everything that has to get done before you submit that number to that general contractor. Even though the drawings don't say it, it's coming, right? And so
Yeah, let me just finish that up for you, Lee, with I guess basically what you just said at the end. If you're putting numbers together before 100% documents, you got to have some fluff money in there, because it does not matter what. I've never found an engineer or an architect that said, well, everything's in there, I just got to pretty it up and finish the details. It's never in there. There's always room for cost growth because the design is incomplete. So if you're working with documents that are not in 100%, and you can't prove to yourself that everything's on the documents that you need, that will be in the building or the project, make sure you're putting some contingency in there and identify it, so that you internally know it. And if you want to expose it to your customer, then expose it, but make sure you have your contingencies.
yeah. So all right, it's
All right, so-
7:20. So we'll return at 7:25 and go through the other side of this, and then we'll be pretty much rocking and rolling. So
Okay,
7:25, Beth, if that works.
It's 7:18, and we're gonna give them, everybody come back at, is it 7:19 now?
Yeah,
We'll come back
7:25.
7:25.
Yep.
Okay, good.
Okay, perfect.
Hi, Miss Beth, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
I will not be in this country for the next month. I have to see my mom in Jamaica, but I'm hoping, I generally use Zoom because we Zoom her. So hopefully it works. If it doesn't, does that mean it's the end of the game for me? I will be returning.
No, you can have some staff member attend, because as we stated earlier, the certificate goes to the company. And if you just have someone in the States be on standby, or to also attend with you, and that way it cover both bases.
Oh, okay.
The last time I gave this course, it was from Jamaica, and all you need is good internet connection. Don't worry.
I'm up in the country, so I'm just hoping.
So as I said, make sure you have good internet connection.
Okay.
We'll talk offline also.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Mm.
All right, Louis, you there? Ready to go?
Yes,
Louis?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Um. So this is the our designated time to stop this is 8 o'clock. But as we go through this, I know sometimes when we're doing these courses, people come and they have questions that they want to ask, right? This presentation that we're presenting, usually after this, course, we send it to Beth and Joe, and they send it out to the group participants. And a lot of times we get a lot of follow up calls, from the participants asking us specific questions, and we do our best to kind of answer those questions as best we can. But one of the things that I said at the beginning is that this is about you guys because you guys are the guys that are here taking risks every day and putting numbers together. And when you get an opportunity to talk to somebody like Louis, that's been doing this for a long period of time, we're not just talking about small projects. We're talking about all kind of projects, where it's K through 12, hospitals, airports, you name it. We pretty much have covered it in our lifespan of PCS and in Louis' lifespan of doing this. So as we go through, guys, like I said, I know we got information here that we're presenting to you guys, but like I said, you guys may have some specific questions, and we'll try to ease up at about 7, maybe 45 or 50 to see where we're at, and then we'll just, if you guys got questions, let's just jump into your guys' questions and close it out that way, if that's okay with everybody.
Well, I hope that's what it takes, Lee, but given the fact that the front end took on a lot more time than we anticipated, I'm hoping that if I don't get through by the times you just stated, that people will be able to hang on for a little longer.
Yes, we typically, sometimes we go over about 5-10 minutes in the past. And if they cannot, the people who cannot stay on will send me a note in chat.
A message, yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Good, and thank you. And also PCS, Lewis and Lee, also we have the chat open so they can, and we're going to ask each of you to also type in your questions, because if we're not able to get to your questions and to answer them in lieu of the time, we will reach out to Lee and Lewis and provide them some of the questions and receive answers as we once again follow up with you guys. Once again, this is not the ending. This is only the beginning of the program. And once we conclude the program after November 15, we will be scheduling one-on-ones with each of you to see exactly what you're looking for, additional resources and services. So thank you very much. Go take it away, guys.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All right, so we're now into the estimating process. Basically, three parts to this: principles of estimating, tools and resources, and how to set up the estimate. All right, principles. As I said earlier, I think it was the first thing I started with. You must have a defined scope. You can't estimate something that you don't know about or don't know enough about, i.e. the cake. Must be organized. If you're not organized, you're going to be all over the place. Okay, so make sure you're organized. If you're not a normally organized person, and we're not all organized, some people are super organized, some people are not. Find a way to get organized for your estimates. If you don't get organized for anything else, it's just like your accounting. Make sure you get organized with anything to deal with the money side of your business. It must have structure. It must be logical. Okay. I.e., and that's where the structure comes in. Structure helps you to make things logical. It must be consistent in your approach. Don't do one estimate, one bid one way and the other one another way and the third one another way. Do them all the same way. That means your team can learn and reach back to get information from prior exercises. And it must have accountability. If you said it was 380 cubic yards of concrete, make sure you have an audit trail back to that 380 cubic yards, or else you're going to get lost once the time comes for you to actually go and buy that concrete. So going down, define scope. And in our business, it's usually a set of design documents, or for you specifically, it's contract documents, which mainly made up of drawing specs and the contract. Okay, and read everything. A lot of us tend to just look at the drawings because we come from a visual business, but do not deprive the process of you reading and studying your specifications and the contract document. That's where the details are, and that's where most people end up losing because they did not realize that something was shown on the drawing one way, right? But in the specification, the detail that it was described in slightly different, okay? And the specifications, drawing specifications don't support drawings. Drawings support specifications because the engineers and designers have written down in those specs what you're to do, and they're giving you some drawings to support it. Of course, understand the existing conditions, what the schedule is going to be, and whatever the change order directives are. So if it's a change order. So again, this is a very important page here. Understanding and making sure you have the defined scope. And keep a binder or some kind of folder. If you're electronic on your computer, keep some kind of folder specific to each project, or to each opportunity. Or if you're a paper person, have a 3-wing binder or whatever, but be organized and document. And you'd be surprised how much you go back to that information as time goes on. Okay, must be, and the organization, organize the work into manageable pieces, i.e. manageable in terms of your estimating it, and manageable in terms of how you're going to execute it. Then decide on the format. Now, there are some cases where the format is decided for you by your design documents, right? If they're not, i.e. in the case of the various DOTs, it's usually a bid item or pay item schedule. So you automatically have that, but it's not everything that's in the pay item schedule is going to be the cost of your work. So you have to find ways to provide your estimate based on that pay item schedule, but the things that are not associated directly, i.e. the indirect costs, somehow get attributed back to those costs. Okay, you can't have your your supervision as a separate line item because they didn't give you the space for that. They only give you the line items for all of the piping and excavation and structures. Find a way to fold those numbers back into, i.e. your insurance cost, your money cost, your supervision cost, your temporary works cost back into your unit prices. The main structures when you're not given anything is CSI unit format. Again, the unit format is mainly a functional structure. And if you want to find out about that, you can just type it in and you'll find the unit format systems and structures out there. Trade, which is the way most subcontractors price their bids, is in trade. And that trade is really the same sub CSI. You break it out into, if you're a site work contractor, everything's going to be 02 and 03 and maybe a little 04 involved. And the other one is the response to the bid, i.e. what I described earlier on, which is the pay items and things of that that nature. Or you might be defining one for yourself because there was nothing provided. If you're providing one for yourself, make sure and go back to this, which is make sure that it is organized and it is organized in manageable pieces. Logical. Produce an estimate in the same order that the work will be performed. That's just so that your brain can work with it, because you don't want to do the estimate backwards and really you might miss something, because we're all in construction. We all know that, especially you as contractors, know what you're putting together. So I would strongly suggest that you put your estimates together the same way. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to start out by getting some prices or reaching out to the marketplace to get prices on long lead items, because you need that information right away. But even then, do that but on the side, but get your estimate together in that functional process of how you would be building it. Use the 80-20 rule, to concentrate on the big ticket items, which is, for most projects, 20% of the work consumes 80% of the time. So make sure that you are concentrating on those big ticket items with regards to putting your estimate together, because missing the small ones, not good, but it's not necessarily going to break you. If you miss the big ones, that's what's going to break you. And the big ones are usually the smaller amount of estimating work. So find where your 80-20 line is and make sure you spend most of your time on that 20% of the items that cost 80% of the money. Consistency, i.e., as I mentioned before, make sure that the way you put your estimates together, from estimate to estimate, from parts of estimate to parts of estimate, are consistent, because it makes it easier to find and correct errors. And trust me, when you're doing estimating, you are going to make errors. It's just a simple fact. It's numbers, and we all falter on numbers sometimes. One of my law classes, the professor had a case law that said where the judge ruled in favor of the estimator, because the judge said, listen, this requirement assumes that this person is looking at numbers all the time, and they're going to make an error now and then. Of course, an error can be detrimental to your business, and therefore you must be consistent so that when errors take place, you can find them. And errors usually take place in one area. It is in the unit of measure that you use. If concrete is being given to you in cubic yards, don't go and price it in cubic feet. And that might be a kind of a wishy-washy example, but make sure you understand that the unit matches the unit of measure matches the price that you're putting down, okay? And that's where you'll find most errors in an estimate. Okay, so the tools and resources. Of course, there's the scope document, and then there's the software, hardware, pricing data, and the most important one, in my opinion, because you're business people, so your knowledge and experience of what it is you're doing has a huge part to play in those numbers that you come up with. Just because somebody else said it should be that, you might know different and know better because you've done this before, you've worked with that particular customer, you've worked at that location. And so that experience is a big part of how you put your numbers together. Scope, of course, as mentioned before, drawings, look out for alternates and options that apply to your trade or to your specific element of work, the specs, the contract, and any addendas that are taking place while the project is being bid. And make sure you go to those pre-bid meetings. Very important, because the kind of questions that are asked sometimes opens your eyes to certain things that you might not have thought of. Then there's software. Of course, the number one software, as I keep telling Lee, in the world to doing estimates is this one. It's Excel. That's what everybody uses. But there are other specific software tools out there. For takeoff, there's, of course, and I strongly suggest you find it, if you don't already have one, invest in a good takeoff tool. The main one out there, to my knowledge, is this one, OST, on-screen takeoff. Bluebeam is well worth the money you pay for it. We believe it gives you what you need without having to pay some of the higher prices. PDF has a takeoff system that's kind of in line with Bluebeam, but not as good as Bluebeam. Autodesk have their own PlanSwift, eTakeoff. In site, if you do site work and you do anything to do with dirt, I strongly suggest you invest in a site work takeoff package. Calculating dirt is one of the most difficult things in construction. And they have some, Insight is just one of those that do it. It's the one I'm most familiar with. Of course, there are also.
Do you use Procore at all?
Excuse me?
Do you use Procore at all?
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
No, Procore is what we say is Procore is for management, right? And where we're at is on that front end of it before it actually gets to Procore, right? So basically our numbers feed into systems like Procore because now they're into the management. Yeah, you can start an estimate up in Procore, but Procore is like a really big, expensive package that a lot of small, firms, can't afford. But at some point, the way the industry is going, a lot of firms are going to have to, make sure that they have some type of technology built into their overall operations. It's just the way the industry is going. But yeah. Procore is a like I said, if you had a big organization, big operation, yeah, Procore could be a system that you could use. But I think for small DBEs, it's just way too big.
They stepped forward and they did do that. There's an estimating takeoff piece for $139 a month.
Oh, great! So that's another option. Okay, so in the processing software, one of the big names is Timberline by Sage, Win Estimator, MC Squared. I don't know if they're still around. I think they were purchased by RIB. RS Means, of course, the biggest name in construction, and I do mean that. More people in construction know of this brand than any other single brand because of its history and what everybody's involved in pricing things. HCSS, another site work or heavy construction type software. Success Estimator. No, I think Hard Dollar is that heavy bid site work tool. And it's the one that I'm most familiar with, Success Estimator. So again, these are investments in your process to do one, to get your scope right, i.e. the takeoff, and two, to organize and price. Because what estimating software does, it doesn't price your job. It helps you to organize. You're the one pricing your job with the information that's been provided to you or you're getting for yourself. Hardware, of course, you need your computers. Don't need to go into that. Pricing sources, again, RS Means is out there. Your previous projects, research, your labor, your labor information from the labor department, especially if you have to use prevailing wage rates. And of course, there's estimator experience. Nothing more important than that, actually. no matter what information you get out of this, it has to be interpreted by somebody and specifically targeted to the task at hand. Just because you're buying concrete for $180 a cubic yard for this job doesn't mean that's what you need to price for the next job. Even if the concrete didn't go up, there might be other things that are associated with this job, which means that you have to use you have to add money to that $180 for some reason or other. Knowledge and experience. Yeah, as I said before, it's the most important thing in an estimate. Your knowledge and your experience of what it is you're doing. Develop corporate knowledge, i.e. get organized, stay organized, document all bids, whether win or lose, document them and have them. They will become good information later on. Even if it's not for the prices, it could be just for the contacts. And train as many people as you can. The world is short of estimators, trust me. Train young interns. It's not sexy, but it is a good profession to have. So, setting up the estimate. Again, understand the scope, define, and so on. So understanding the scope, read and examine all your documents. Look for gaps, look for advantages. That's a big one. Look for advantages. I'm not going to tell you why. Generate questions and prepare a list of inclusions and exclusions. Don't put a bid together and not tell them the things that you anticipate based on the way you've put your estimate together or the information that you've used to put the estimate together. Define the scope. When the documents provided are incomplete, as was with the cake, assumptions are used to fill the gaps, document those assumptions. Prepare a narrative to supplement. Narrative should fill the gaps. Prepare a list of inclusions and exclusions. Again, I'm going through this very fast because our time is running out here. Understand the prevailing conditions, i.e. what are your time constraints? Is the project local? What is the access to the project site? What are the government bodies that you have to make sure you're following the rules, regulations, and laws for? And what are the liquidated damages, if any? I.e. if I am late on my promised schedule, what am I going to charge? Make sure you read the document and do a search. Every time you get a bid document, search for liquidated damages and see if you are your work is included in that. This construction sequence. Make sure you understand your construction sequence. Phasing, partial delivery. You might have to do sidewalks but you have to do this part of the sidewalks in month 3 and the other part of the sidewalk in month 7. That's going to cause you serious pricing issues. Hello?
There's a feedback. The phone near.
Yeah. If you can turn off your, mute your mics. Something's feeding back here.
Oh, is that me?
Hello? Okay. Construction materials and methods of means and methods of doing whatever it is you're doing, and make sure you know where your staging area is. Every construction project requires a staging area. I don't care what it is. Even if you're just fixing the patio at your house, you need a staging area. Make sure you understand that, because materials and people have to come in and out, and things have to be stored and laid down and so on. Perform your takeoff. Make a list of the items to be measured, i.e. that's the best way to start a takeoff. The list should be compiled in construction sequence, i.e. the way you're going to build it. Use your specs as a guide, i.e. as I said, assume that the drawings support the specs, not the other way around. Complete each item before continuing, i.e. don't start on the pipe just because it's only on that drawing and there's somewhere in another drawing and you didn't get that. Do all of your pipe one time. That way you're mentally focused on piping and all the issues that are associated to it. Complete each task before continuing, and mark completed items, i.e. make sure you don't go back and have to do it again. But if you're using one of the better quantity takeoff tools, then that should not be a problem. Pricing. Pricing data, some of those I've described before. Corporate data, i.e. that history that you've developed over time, previous bids, your suppliers, of course, that's where the rubber meets the road, where your suppliers can give you numbers and make sure that they have a contractually agreed to that. Other subcontractors, of course, equipment rentals. Sure, you've got all your equipment assigned or considered when putting your bids together. If you're doing site work, that's where equipment becomes a big part of the exercise. Or in some cases, in this segment of the industry, make sure you know which equipment, if any, is being provided to you by the by the prime. And of course, again, I can't tell you enough times your experience or the experience of somebody in your organization. All right, analyzing the results. Is the final cost reasonable? How does the final cost compare with historic data? Is the final cost reflective of current market conditions? i.e., we did this for $780 a cubic yard last year. Well, this year, the market might think it's $1,200 a cubic yard. You don't want to go put in $800 this time, even if you think you can do it for that, and the market is driving something else. You'd be leaving money on the table. And, you know, as we all know in construction, the object is to make money. So find ways to make money. Are my quotes accurate? Okay, even if your sub is giving you stuff, don't just take it just like that. Make sure you have some way of checking his scope, his or her scope, and having some way of identifying where that number should be. Is your cost competitive? Now, everything I said before are subject to that particular one, because if all of those things are included and it's not competitive, you can't get work. So it's a balancing act. And can I win this bid? All right. Sometimes you don't want to bid, as Lee said earlier on. You just want to make sure your customer knows that you responded, but you really don't want this work. And so you put in a ridiculous number, but you get a chance next time. And if you put in a ridiculous number, you're the only one, then you get the work and you get a chance to make some money. So that ends the estimating side. Usually this would have been about 7 o'clock. And I'm on number 41 of 62, I think. So what time is it? We're 7:49. I'll try and run through this real quick. What is a bid? Difference between estimate and a bid, bid preparation, bid documents. Again, you'll get this this presentation so that you can go through them yourself and identify and just use it as a reference for when you're putting your numbers together. Topics: understand the contractor's obligation. The delays, again, mentioned liquidated damages. What are the permits and fees that you're responsible for if you're not the prime contractor? Coordination with other projects. Make sure you understand invoice and payments. We are in an industry that is notorious for late payment and payment problems. So make sure you follow everything, cross every T and dot every I. As stupid as it might look, the amount of invoices I've had over the years rejected because one little thing didn't go the way they said it should go. Understand if there's retainage that you would then have to manage how your cash flow is resolved with regards to retainage being kept from your monthly payments, and any special accounting requirements. Make sure you have them. Those are the things that are in your contract documents. Change order rules. Make sure you understand what the change order process in your bid is. Administrative charges, and use of change order, how it's used and what the process is. Make sure you understand that, because if you get change orders and you go and price it a certain way and you're committed to doing the work that way, and the rules of the contract was not that way, then you might be losing out. What is a bid? Providing the owner and his or her representative with a detailed response to a request for the purpose of selecting an enterprise based on the rules and requirements of the owner. Remember, there aren't general rules. It's each owner has their own rules to provide a service and or project. I think that should have been further up. What's the difference between a bid and an estimate? Well, a bid is a monetary value with conditions charged for a product, process, or service. To determine the determination of a bid is a business decision, right? So although you might come up with $3.85 million as your estimate, you send that to management, or you as management might say, you know what? I think I can take $220,000 off of this. So no matter what your estimate is, the final number is a business decision. It is related to, but separate from the development of the estimate. Okay, it is the imperative that the estimate is accurate in order to facilitate a sound bidding decision. Because when you're going to take 220,000 off of that 3-point-something million, you're assuming that everything in that estimate is correct. Bid preparation and submittal. Again, these are things that you're probably familiar with already. Read and study all the documents, prepare responsibility list, i.e. in your organization and outside, who's going to do what, where, and when. Apply for your bonding. Make sure that if you're required bonding, you start that process very early. Identify any special requirement, supporting documents, scope of work, solicit your vendors. You got to know who's going to be providing you the numbers that you're going to use to put your bid together, put your estimates together, and always have a bucket that you put those subcontractors' numbers in before you get it. Make sure you understand what it should be. Prepare a schedule and make sure that it's in alignment with the master schedule for the project. So you talk to the contractor or the entity that you're bidding with or bidding to make sure your schedule is in line. Prepare and lay out the site utilization plan and manage and incorporate RFIs and addendums, because they will take place, especially on civil projects. Bid documents, contract, technical specs, drawings, other documents, addendums, letters, memos, notices issued by the owner. Be very cognizant of the paperwork that takes place once those documents are on the street. Okay. And nowadays, with most things being done through websites and portals, that's made it easier for those responding, but you can still miss something by not paying attention. So make sure you have somebody that all they're doing is making sure that that information flow is being managed and you're not out of the loop. How do I make that decision whether to bid or not? Does the opportunity fall within the boundaries of your business objectives and plans? Develop a decision matrix as to why you might bid something. And one of those might be who the customer is. You might have worked for a particular customer and don't like it, or you heard something about that customer and you don't think you want to get in bed with that customer. So, be decisive on how you decide whether or not you're going to put in a bid. Identify the risks. The property is sloped too much. I don't want to go and do work on that site. Read the solicitation and read it again. Make sure more than one person reads it, actually. Evaluate your financial resources. Make sure once you commit that you've got the cash to get it done. The bonding requirement and your capacity for bonding. You don't want to have your bonding capacity max out on something that you really shouldn't be doing. So make sure you make your choices well. Make sure you decide whether you're bidding as a prime, sub, or JV. Determine the number of bidders, because that if you see something and there's 18 bidders, you might say, you know what, that's one of the reasons to go to these pre-bid meetings. You know what, that's just too many people to compete against. I might want to back out of this one. There's one coming up next week. There might be only 3 or 4 or 5 bidders. I stand a better chance. Evaluate your business capacity. And again, this is a business decision. Review the table of contents of the documents. Read the instructions to bidders, i.e. the scope of work, the forms that are attached, lots of forms, especially when you're doing work for the various governments, i.e. municipal, county, state, and federal. I mean, it's just paperwork heaven, and it's so easy to miss something. So have somebody that's in control of those documents and make sure you don't miss anything. And that's all they do. They're not estimating, they're not getting prices. All they're doing is managing your documents, if you can afford to. And I understand that, sometimes that's easy to say, but anyhow, you can find somebody that just manages the documents so that you can be doing other things related to putting the estimate and bid together. That would be a good thing if you can. Familiarize yourself with the forms and the attachments associated with putting the bid together. Understand the bid requirements. Make sure you have a copy of the solicitation, copy of the instructions, copy of all bid forms, blank bid forms, prepare a mock bid envelope, i.e. before bid day, long before bid day, I'm going to put together, and in most cases, what I've seen in the past is people actually put together a mock bid three-ring binder, and everything that's going to be dealing with the bid that's going to be put together and presented is in that binder. Even if it doesn't have a value or an information on it yet, there's a space for it. Provide space for your addenda, maintain a bound copy, and read the instructions to the bidders again. Can't tell you to do that too many times. Primary action items, solicitation of the documents, the pre-bid conference, and site visit. If you're doing site work, you can't just estimate without going to the site. I would strongly, I would strongly let you know that you should always make sure you go visit your site, and I'm sure you all know that. Bid logistics, the date, time, and location. This is so important, and people have missed bids because they had the wrong date or the wrong time, or showed up 5 minutes after the bid was due. Make sure you understand the insurances, the bond requirement, if any. Make sure you understand all the bid forms, the wage rate compliance, if it's certain kinds of government work. Davis-Bacon and how overtime has to be paid. EBO requirements and qualifications of the bidder and team. Yeah, make sure that you are qualified, because in some cases you could be bidding something and you're not qualified, and you don't know that until the bids go in and certain documents were not part of your numbers or your bid. Continuing, understanding the contractor with the contractor's obligation. Read the document instructions, general conditions, and special conditions. Attend required bid conferences, visit sites. And again, this is simply going through at a detail level those items that I touched on earlier. Set forth get the general conditions, understand them, understand the various clauses, understand any special conditions that are there, because sometimes special conditions are written because of a specific location or specific type of work. Make sure you understand the insurances. Again, I'm going over things that I've mentioned before, but this is the sequence in which they fall. The contractor has the sole responsibility for satisfying itself concerning the nature, location of the work, and existing conditions. Don't bother to use Google Earth to find out about the site. Go to the site. If it's going to cost you money, it's just a part of the cost of doing business. I.e. your transportation. Where does the stuff that I got to haul off got to go? How's your labor? How are you going to get your labor? You're going 300 miles away from Atlanta. How do I get labor down there? Do I have to carry my own labor? Do I have to put them up over, overnight, weeks at a time, and things of that nature? Where's the power coming from? What's the general physical conditions and access? When are they expecting me to do this? In the middle of summer, in the middle of winter? It has an impact on how you put your numbers together. What's the ground surface and what equipment is required, and do I provide those, or is the prime going to provide those if I'm not the prime? Site conditions, access situations. See if you notice different site conditions that are not identified in the specs and drawings, and notify the engineer and get that in writing before you're proceeding with the work. Any changes. A different site could be subsurface or latent physical conditions, i.e. one of the biggest change order area in our business is subsurface conditions. If you're doing site work, make sure you understand that. Previously unknown physical conditions, it was a dump once and there's all kinds of trash down there that I got to dig up, but it's not on the drawings. Continuing, delays. There are three types of delays: contractor at fault, owner at fault, or delays caused by conditions beyond the control of either party. Liquidated damages, reasonable estimates of damage, amount, rate to be determined. Again, make sure that you read your documents to see if there are any requirements for you that will be imposed on you because of delays related, and then the related commitment to liquidated damages. Permits and fees. If you're paying the permits and fees, make sure they're in your numbers. Um, permits, licenses, and inspections, things of that nature. Include time for approvals in your schedule. Make sure that that's a line item in your schedule, okay, when you give that schedule to your contractor. Assign contracts, owner approved or required before contract is assigned, over approval is required. Consent of owner for subcontractors. There are times when the prime cannot just use any subcontractor. Make sure that that is a known, that you understand that part of the documents before spending the resource, your resources in putting bids together. Maintain purchase orders for your subcontractors, i.e. that's another part of being organized. Make sure you understand when your subcontractor bills are due, when their invoices are due, where your commitment is to pay them and where the cash is coming from and when it's coming, or do you only pay when get paid? Make sure that your subcontractor understands that if that's the case. Assignment and subcontractors will not relieve a contractor of its responsibility. Yeah, assignment and subcontractors. Okay, coordination with other projects. Make sure you understand other projects that's going on that could impact what you're doing. Communicate with your project manager and document any problems and arrange your work in clean areas so as to avoid problems. Invoicing and retainage, special accounting requirements, mentioned those before. Again, check them out and make sure you have your cash to be able to manage and pay. First of all, you got to pay your workers, then you got to pay your contractors, and make sure you have that money available for that. Sometimes we just, in this industry, just don't get paid enough. Sorry, you don't get paid in time on a timely enough basis to be able to use that money to pay these bills in most cases. And so you have to make sure you know where your money's coming from. Change orders, again, been over that. Make sure you understand what the process is. Make sure that it's in writing, and make sure that you put administrative costs on your change order work. Then you have to do any.
Louis, before you go on this change order, because this change order, this issue just came up for a customer that we were working with in a large municipality. And one of the things that the vendor wanted to do a change order, and the owner was like, nope, not gonna happen. But what they did do was come together, because what's important is they needed to agree on an index that is tracking the changes in pricing and commodities. BLS by the federal government, if you guys don't know that exists, it is a producer pricer index, right? And they track the changes in all of these cost categories. And so the one thing that they first had to come together to do is agree on an index. And once you can agree on that index, then we can tell you the percentage of change for that labor category. So if you're saying that, hey, painting and coatings have went up, you can go to this index and it'll tell you, and it does it for a year. And sometimes BLS does it within the last 6 months. You can see the movement of that commodity to justify the change order to say, okay, hey, this just went up 30%. And paintings and coatings in the last year has gone up 30%. Now, if you're going to go say freight went up, well, my freight costs went up, right? How are you going to justify that? And how are you going to back it up? You need something to back it up. So if you've never used the BLS, the producer price index, you can go there, and if you and your, owner or your contractor, whoever you're, dealing with, say, hey, first thing let's agree upon an index that we can both follow. So if the price of vinyl has gone up, I can support that because here is the percentage change within the last 6 months or within the last year, which is why I'm asking for the change order, because the owner was like, look, you know what? I'm just going to go rebid it. Right? That's his
Okay.
option.
However, this situation can only take place if reference to the use of that document or any kind of indexing is already included in the contract documents.
Exactly.
Right. So if they're not, if it's, and of course, this method has come up recently, primarily because of the hyperinflation that's been taking place. And there are lots of contractors who just cannot burden the difference in cost. So they've come up with this is one of the methods. So check to see if there's a indexing solution in the documents that you're responding to.
Yes.
Okay.
Very
Um,
important.
Right. So yeah, change orders again, going through it's no different from the regular estimating, but there are other things that you must make sure you have in it, especially your overhead and your administrative costs. Continue with change orders, issue change notice to the contractor, assist the contractor's change proposal. That's you might have to assist the prime contractor. And then these are just the steps to go through. Bid day, double check everything. Submit the bid to the primes, i.e. hopefully you're not submitting just with one prime. I know that sometimes some of these primes say that, well, I only want you on my team, i.e. he or she does not want to give you, give their competition the advantage that you bring to them. But as small businesses, we should not be forced to only bid to one entity. We should be able to bid to everybody that's going out there to increase our opportunities. Submit bids to the customer before the cutoff time. You would not believe the amount of times that has failed. Wait at the bid opening to see if it's a public bid opening and you can see what's going on. And document information from the bid opening. Recap, things to do. Read, study all bid documents, prepare a responsibilities list, apply for the bond, identify required supporting documents, make sure you know what the scope of the work is, solicit vendors, prepare your cost estimates. Oops, sorry. Prepare your cost estimates, prepare your construction schedule, very important, just as important as your estimate in some cases. Prepare layout and site utilization plans. And in this case, sometimes this contractor gives you a schedule and you got to test that against your own schedule to make sure that you can commit to what they're giving you. Prepare layout and site utilization plan and make sure you manage your addendums and RFIs. Attend the pre-bid, make sure you go to the site, ask questions and double check everything and submit your hopefully winning bid. Post-bid, make sure you get information, make sure you get all of the bids. I think somebody said earlier on, one of the discussions, they cannot get from their contractors where they fell in that process. And that is so unfair, especially to small businesses. That's part of our lessons learned, to know what we're doing, how we're setting, whether I'm in the right business or not. Because if I keep coming, way higher than everybody, I got to look and see what I'm doing differently, or maybe I need to go to another trade or try something else. But thank you for bringing that up, whoever that was, because that's a critical piece of this process that small businesses need. Find out the lessons learned and how do I do better next time if I'm not the winning bid. And even if I am the winning bid, if I'm 30% lower than everybody else, oh my God, what did I do something wrong? Why did I leave so much money on the table? What's in my process that's I'm leaving so much money on the table? Because that's my profits. Consolidate all bid related notes and documents. These days, of course, you can digitize everything. I suggest you digitize, put it on in your system somewhere. Contact your bond company about your bonding. Contact your vendors and suppliers, again, assuming that you won, or if you lost, say, we didn't get this one, or we got this one, be ready to get going by so-and-so. Review the bids for errors and omissions. The bid process doesn't end on bid day. You got to keep looking. An estimate is never finished, in my opinion, because of the nature of what it is. It is an estimate and it's always changing, even post. Review bids for suppliers and subcontractor buyout, i.e. where do I start buying them out and getting them to commit. Do a team lessons learned, QA, QC review of the documents in your bid and follow up on the award. And then there's the bake cake. I kind of sped through that, folks. I did have a few things here. I mean, I can share just an example of what an early on high level estimate. I think we did this a few years back for a small daycare down in South Lake Mall. But this is just to give you what I mean by structure and organization and simple unit pricing. Okay, this was to develop the budget, but you can develop your bid the same way too. If you're working directly for the owner, for instance, and make sure you understand. You put your notes in your estimates to make sure that, because we always think we're going to remember things. And by 2 days later, you've completely forgotten what made up that number. So make sure if it's a lump sum number, you put notes to identify what your decision process was in putting that number together. And again, organize it in major elements. Fire protection had a fire sprinkler system and an alarm system. So we identified those 2 elements. Electrical had interior power, exterior lighting, interior lighting, and i.e. their group, so we know what the price is for each sub element as well as the total element. Then communications and miscellaneous items come up. The site work part of it had its groupings as well. The entity wanted the 2 play areas identified separately. Then allowances, we didn't know what the water connection was going to be, so we came up with our best judgment of what it is. I don't call it a guess, I call it a judgment. We're making a judgment on what we think it is based on experience or the last one, or making a call and you weren't able to get the exact number, so you, based on the conversation, you made a judgment. You know, you total up everything and then you put in all your soft costs. In this case, I'm glad this is what I call soft costs, and it's the general conditions and overheads. A lot of people think that this should be a percentage of this number. Yes, of course, eventually it's a percentage, but please, I advise you to always price your indirect cost based on time and personnel, not on percentages. You can leave a lot of money on the table or lose a lot of money if you simply go by percentages. Make sure you identify what the elements are, the tasks involved in doing the things that are not measured and in place when you leave the site. That's what this number is, the overhead and general conditions. This was a simple budget estimate, so I didn't have to do a detailed estimate of that, but I did do it on a per month basis as to what I thought a contractor would charge for that. Then make sure you identify your bonds and make sure you have a reasonable fee and profit, know where it is in your estimate, and put in some kind of contingency and escalation for future, especially these days, for future price increases. So that's just an example of a small estimate for a small project that I could find and share with you for this exercise. And then summarize it so that you can see, and you can, in some cases, you want your owner might, or your customer might want to see a summary of it. You can just give him the summary. You don't always want to share your details. Okay. And I think we've run way past the time, and I hope I've been able to cover most things for most people. And again, you'll have the document and just use it as a checklist for putting your estimates and bids together. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Louis. And yeah, for this, guys, like I said, when we do this, you usually have a little bit more time. We had to kind of rush through this, at the end, but we usually get a little bit more time to get into some examples and to, point some things out a little bit more in detail and spend a little bit more discussion time around certain areas. But, if you guys have questions, definitely fire them off now. And some of the questions, like Joe said, we'll get from comments. But if you guys got any burning question that you want to, ask us while we're here, we'll be more than happy to, do our best to answer it. If anybody got any questions. And if
Any
not,
questions?
and if
No
not,
questions.
yes.
Okay. And your contact information, you can put that back there first slide. I had your guys' numbers. You can email me the questions also. And I would forward it to Mr. Thomas and Parkins also. And
Can I just jump in and say how excellent that presentation was and how information packed it was? And I'm sure that those listening have to digest it a bit. I'm assuming they're going to get a copy of the slides.
yes,
And probably the recording to maybe review, but wow, just a great presentation. And I just wanted to let you know I was here and listening and appreciate all of what you shared.
thank you. So Lou, you can stop sharing your screen now. I'll wrap it up with our next session.
Okay. There you
I'll
go.
share my screen again. Our next session is October the 18th. That's module 5, bonding and insurance. And you already, right here, we have already written homework assignment was due for the 11th next week, but we went over it already, so that's not necessary. And also the survey for this class we appreciate Ms. Kimberly King coming, Mr. Lou Parkins presenting, and Lee Thomas. You can go into chat and click on the link, and that'll take you directly to complete the survey for this session. Again, any questions?
Beth, we can get the contact information. I know I saw it on your screen a few moments ago, but I don't know what happened. It disappeared.
Okay, let's see. Should I?
But great presentation. It was really, really great and very informative.
I would send it to everyone tomorrow. Normally I follow up with, in case people do not click onto the link tonight, I'll send the survey link tomorrow, and I will send the exact contact information for Mr. Parkins. Mr. Lee Thomas information, I have their telephone. We'll give it to you in an email. That way I have their email addresses and the telephone number.
Okay, thank you, Beth.
Project Cost Solutions. We thank Lisa Leon from our DC office for joining us. Ms. Kimberly King was on from GDOT. She's no longer with us. And Joe Jackson, here's our contact information for our center. Executive Director Joe Jackson. Email address is jjackson@msasbtrc.org. Our main number is 404-334-0545. My information, bbarner@msasbtrc.org. You guys have that because I always send emails out to you. My telephone number is on there also, 404-334-0568. And it was a full pack workshop. We had the webinar and it went over, but sometimes it go over a little bit. We're sorry for that, but some good information you guys get. And we had GDOT presenting some information, so that made it go a little longer. We have in our next session, and it's going to be on the bonding and insurance for that session. So we look forward to you guys next Tuesday. Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Lee Thomas and Mr. Lewis Parkins.
Hey, thank you guys very much.
Thank you, and we appreciate everybody taking the time out to listen to us this evening.
Yeah, we did. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye. Oh, we have a question in chat. Survey done. Great session. Fabulous background. Oh, thank you. Bye-bye. I'm ending it.